Hi and welcome back to the channel, and for today's live match it's back to Soudley on the Shropshire Union Canal for my second attempt at qualifying for the Canal Masters final. First qualifier was earlier in the year where I drew next to the end peg with Steve Dudley on it, and he qualified with £2.14 and I had very little that day. And today's draw isn't much better because I've drawn peg 18, which is the first peg to the right of Hinstock Bridge, and I'm in with the cables. I've got no chance of qualifying. I need a miracle basically. When I drew the peg, I felt I could have the best match of my life and still not beat the cables. But still there's a section money to fish for, so we'll give it a go. Now I've started off by feeding squat lines. I usually start by feeding some worms down the track, but as you can see there was a boat coming through. So I started off by feeding my squat lines, which was 11 metres pushing over to 13 metres towards the brambles. And I planned on feeding squats there via the catapult and then some hemp along the line of the tree, hoping to catch some hemp fish later on. I fed a chop worm line to my right of the peg, again over towards the brambles, which was fairly deep. It was around 2 feet deep there, so I was optimistic of catching a few fish there. And then I fed a track line with worm and casters, and then to my left, where you can just see that duck going along the edge there, I fed loose fed casters there. It's quite shallow there. I'm guessing it's because it's going towards the bridge and it's just silted up, because no boat traffic ever gets anywhere near to that area because of it being so close to the bridge. And like I said, I just loose fed casters there, hoping to catch the odd fish. Right, there's quite a bit of pace on the canal today, and that says to me there's a lot of boats about. Well, at the moment anyway, which is a good thing really, because these canals react better when there's more boats on them. Now I did take bread with me, and I planned on starting short on the bread, but when I seen the colour of the canal and the amount of movement in the canal, I left it in the bag. So I'm starting the match on a piece of worm over towards them brambles to my right. I would normally start down the track, but like I said, there's a boat just gone through. I wanted that to settle before I go anywhere near it. So quick look over there and see if I can get a good start. Just using a small segment of worm on the hook. It's a size 16 N30. And the float I'm actually using on this rig is an F1 shallow in a 4x12. I think they're perfect for shallow water worm fishing. It's got a nice thick tip, 1.5mm, and it's got a nice shaped body as well for holding against the flow. Well, that wasn't very successful, that start over there, so when I get myself sorted I'll get down the middle and have a look there. So that's an 0.5 gram Preston Power float with a bulk and a couple of droppers, and again that's on a size 16 N30 to an 0.14 hook length. Loose feeding casters over the top. It took a little while to get a bite there, but once I did get a bite, I started getting a few indications. That was feeding a little bit of hemp to the tree line. And there's my first bite, which turned out to be a little pommy. Nice start. There's a lot of these little pommies in this canal. Got some decent stampons as well. Not usually in this area. Them a bit more to my right, and then definitely to my left on them cables and around the cables. Be nice to pick a few odd ones up here though. That little lift of the float then obviously caught something's attention and created a bite. It's a slightly better fish. It's an half decent perch. Put a piece of fresh worm on. Using about an inch and a half segment of worm, Dandrobina worm this is. Not too big. I don't want to single out big fish by putting a bigger piece of worm on, as I know pretty much anything will eat a worm that size. There's another pommy, half decent stamp. Well, because I've had a couple of them pommies on a piece of worm, I thought I'd try the maggot rig over the top and see if that gets a bite. Sometimes it's quicker than catching on the worm. So I'm using a size 18 N10 on this rig, and this is a F1 fine in a 4x14. It's quite a heavy float because you can see how much the canal's moving. And I want to get it down amongst them pretty quick anyway. Still loose feeding casters over the top and keeping that tree line topped up with casters. Managed to pick off a couple of fish on the maggot, but it did seem that the worm was better. I wasn't prepared to sit and wait too long because I knew there were fish in the peg. I was obviously eating the worm faster. You'll have to excuse the noise of the roller. I've got the camera a bit too close to it today. Early on during the match, we had quite a few boats. At times, it seemed like there was never ending. I could see all the way to the next bridge, and at times I could see 4 boats all on the way up. So I've just refed that line, let that settle and have a quick look back over towards the brambles on the worm again. See if there's anything settled over the top of that yet. I did have a couple of bites on this line, but it never really got going. Couple of perch off it. Worth catching, but I was never going to do a weight of them. Don't ask you about to do that again in front of me, Mark. Don't ask you about to do that in front of me again. I've got Mark Hardman to my right, and he's just told the boater to come over as he's coming past me. I don't like it when people do that because they steer the rudder and it creates a lot of movement in the water, and that can wreck your peg. I don't like people doing that, so I told him off. I'll let him off though, he's a mate. So a few fish on that line, but it's not really going anywhere. I'll keep feeding it with casters and see what happens later on during the match. That worm's had a bit of time to settle down the track now, so I'll go and have another look. The boats didn't seem to do too much damage to the track line early on, so it's worth getting on it while you can, because it won't last all day. Oh, there's another boat coming by the sounds of it. Oh dear. As I said, there was a few boats early doors. Can be a bit frustrating at times, but we definitely need boats. I'm just trying to maggot rig over the top of my squat line. You can catch some of those ponamies over ground bait, so it's worth a look. Yeah, you can see on my face I wasn't that impressed with that. Gudging. I'll give it another go though. That rig's an F1 fine again in a 4x10. And that's got a size 18 N10 on 2.010 hook length, AccuPower hook length. It's not happening at the minute. So back down the track, and I've hooked something decent. And at first I thought it was an eel. Turned out to be a fair look pommy, an half decent one as well.
Well, he went to first, I thought it was a fair, I thought it was me. Look, there's three of them on the way. The Armada.
And although there was a lot of boats on the day, well, first half of the match anyway, there was still fish to be caught in the track. So it was just a case of dealing with it. But it was never going to last the way all these boats were coming. There's just so many of them. This one came past, I could see another two or three. Back over to the 11 metre line, this time on a pinky. An half decent stamp roach. I wouldn't mind catching them that size all the time, to be fair. Yet another boat. But I knew there's no way me catching squat fish was going to put a dent into that cables peg. I needed to catch big fish. Something to do in between the boats, because there was quite a few. And you couldn't fish the track when it was like this. Relentless there was. Time to give that ground bait line a bit of a top up. The ground bait was Sonia Bates, Sweet Skimmer, Black River. I put quite a bit of Black River into this mix to help bind the balls because of a lot of movement on the canal. And I wanted it to stay formed for as long as I could. And there was also some black in there as well. So it's Sweet Skimmer, Black and Black River. Feeding a bit more chopworm and castor there down the track. I had to keep topping up that track line really frequent. But like I said, there was a lot of boats. Well, you could see there was a lot of boats. And I don't believe much of that bait stays there once a boat's gone over the top of it. So although there's a load of boats going over, I'm feeding it quite frequent, so I'm trying to keep bait in the peg to try and keep some fish in the peg, basically. And it was working. I was catching some fish in between boat traffic. Once it settled down, I'd get a few bites. And they were worth catching. It was half decent stamp, most of them. Again, another decent perch. 6 or 7 ounce, this one.
I think I'll catch. I mean, there's pommies here, but I just don't think skimmers like being quite busy like that.
Right, it's time to go and have the first of my looks on the 15 to 16 metre line to where I've been loose feeding the casters. Down my peg towards the bridge.
Sorry? Oh no, he's pulling like a train and one.
So it was just past the 14.5 metre section where I started.
To the bridge maybe, but it is pulling hard here. Just come off the track and it's really tramming through.
It's around 18 inches deep there, which isn't a problem being that depth when we got boats on because it was quite coloured. And all I did there was loose fed casters. I got a single caster on the hook. And there's my first fish, which is a roach. I'm using single 6 elastic here. I'm using a size 18 N10. Nice crispy dark caster for the hook. And again, that's an F1. Again, that float's an F14 and a 4x10. And that's got an O12 hook length on. And I'm just tucking it in close to them brambles over there, to that tree line. And the next bite's a bit better. Decent fish, this one. Wasn't what I expected to catch, to be honest. But happy days. It's decent fish.
You know what? I think it's a chub. Yeah. He's an all, it's a chub. Hey, hey, hey! Couple of pounds.
Happy days. Lovely chub of around £2.
I like. 6 is elastic. Rub-a-dub-dub. Ah.
Look at that. Beautiful.
Yeah. Tell you what, it was a delicate little bite.
Wouldn't mind catching a few of them. I'd need loads of them though to beat that peg through the bridge on the cables. Now I've got one of those in my net, I'm bringing my net right up out the water. I've seen all too many chub try and jump out of keep nets.
Get the bug off, get down there, you little bugger. Yeah, boy. I need another 6 or 7 of them, I reckon. Yeah, boy. Hey? There's a balance, isn't it?
And yet another boat. And I'm sure the boats being on the canal helped this peg, especially this line I'm fishing now, because like I said, it's quite shallow, but it kept it coloured. It kept a bit of colour in the water, in that shallow water, which I'm pretty sure gives fish confidence to feed. Plus where it's situated, it's out the way. It just, the boats can't interfere with it. I'm ticking along nicely at the minute, just catching the odd caster fish and then the odd wormfish down the track. And some of them were worth catching on the caster as well. Plus I've had that chub. It's all going quite well.
Orange. Oh. Hey? I think it's only a matter of time now, don't you? You want to see how many pike are in Cambridge now?
I've tucked it in a little bit further now to see if I can get another bite. And I hook another chub. And I'm unlucky with this one because he does me underneath the brambles. It breaks me. Now I made a mistake here now. Instead of getting off my box and putting a bigger rig on, I just put another hook length on this one. Thinking, okay, I was unlucky with that one. I've got one out, but I've been unlucky with that one. I'll give it another go with the same hook length again
Bummer.
and see if I can catch another. That was a mistake. I should have got off my box and put a proper rig on proper elastic, because the next fish I hook is another chub, and that does me as well. Noddy. Again, I'm tucking it right into the brambles here. And it's gone again. I'll give it a load of side pressure. He tops underneath the brambles and he must catch on something straight away because he's stuck there. As you can see, the brambles moving. I'm not sure whether he's on, still on at this point. So I'll just hold on to it for a bit. Can't believe I didn't put bigger gear on after losing that first one. Give it a second or two, see if anything happens. No, he's gone. It's definitely gone. Idiot. There you go. That's it. The Royer gear's coming out.
I'm having it now.
I'm getting the Dura 17s out. That should be adequate enough to get these chub away from those brambles. I'm upping my hook length as well. I'm going to 0.16 to a size 16 M30, and I'll use double caster on that. A single caster doesn't look nice on a size 16.
Numpty.
Just while I'm sorting that rig out, I'll drop my rigging down the track. See if I can catch another fish or two while I'm messing about. Again, that's one of those F1 shallows. Not just for shallow fishing, they're great for fishing up the shelf on canals. While I'm doing that, I hook a fish down the track. Little perch.
Single. I'll be having double now because I'm going to have to put proper hook in them.
I'm making a right mess of this.
Oh, man, what an idiot. What an absolute idiot.
That Dura Slip 17's man enough to pull any chub away from brambles. I have got another top kit in my bag with some 18s Dura hollow through just the one section, in case I'm on a peg that's really snaggy and I need to really drag at them. But don't feel I need that on this peg. Slipping on the hook length now, size 16 and 30. That should be adequate for any chub. So I'll stay down the track while I wait for this boat to go over. And I'll get back over and see if I can catch me another chub. So one of the day hire boats has taken it back to base. Right, back over into the lion's den and see if I can catch me another chub. This time I'm geared up for one, so I can look out. I should have done this after I lost the first fish, to be honest. In the perfect world, I'd have done it after I got that first one out. But I never expected to catch a chub here, to be honest. I know there's been chub here in years gone by, but I haven't seen a chub come out of this bigger canal for donkeys. Just proves I'm still there. Now I'm sitting there for a little while. I'm fishing double caster, as I said. And I get a bite. Bang. Now this fish feels massive, to be honest. I'm thinking this must be a right chub, this thing. I've got... And he topped right up against the tins underneath the brambles, which was like 2 yards past where I hooked him. So I just kept steady pressure on it, and then as soon as he's topped out in open water, I've shipped back sections. I'm still thinking this is a massive chub, this is. But it's not. It's a mirror carp. I was gobsmacked. I haven't seen a carp come out of here for years. Years and years. I'm not complaining though. Easy. It's around £4. I was gobsmacked. Mirror carp.
No, it's like £3.5. Can you believe that?
Now I'm repositioning my landing net now, so my net actually sits over the top of my keep net, in case anything wants to try and jump out. Now when I unhooked him, I noticed that I said an M30 is man enough for a chub. That carp opened the hook up slightly, so I'm going to change the hook length to an 017 reflow power to a size 16 N50. That's a beast of a hook, that is. I don't want to risk opening a hook up on a big fish again. So I'll get my line fed with a bit more bait. I'll get my lines fed. Plenty of casters over where I've just caught that carp. Feed all my other lines and get a hook length out.
Have I? No, I ain't got none with me. It's going to have an empty figure.
It's a proper hook, this is. Take some fish to open this one up.
That's alright, I've changed it to an M50. I'm on an M50 for 17. Hey? You're alright when it's fucking sticking out of his neck. That's sharp, that is. That is sharp. That's sharp. My little buddy, come on, let's have another one of them fuckers. Yeah, boy. Proper fucking meddy, mate. He rolled twice out underneath the bushes, I reckon. A yard and a half. That's what I reckon. So there's a yard and a half into the fucking, into the bank. And then I've got him out and he's rolled just off the bushes. Come on, then.
Just checking nothing's moved when I played that fish.
Yeah. Yeah. Did ya? Alright, I'll let you go so you can carry on. Alright.
We'll see if we can catch another one.
Come on, the top. Did you say how far under the bushes he rolled then? Mark. Right under the bushes, right at the back he rolled. You say I ain't that one though, have I? It's the top, you can see it. Yeah, I got there. It must be more in the stink because I ain't got anything. Might be if I get another bite now. Sorry?
I've pretty much abandoned the idea of catching any squat fish now because I know there's big fish about. So I'm all out trying to catch those. My next bite's off a perch. Half decent size. But not exactly what I'm after.
Yeah.
We're about 3 hours into the match now, and the boat traffic is starting to ease off, which isn't really helping this line that I'm fishing, to be honest, because like I said, it's quite shallow, and I'm sure we need boats to keep the colour in the peg, which will help that area of the peg. Happy days, another bite off a big fish. And this is a chub again, this one. See how easy that elastic managed to drag that away?
Aye?
See how easy that elastic managed to drag that fish away from any danger? Just ship it straight back to a top kit.
Ooh, the big chub.
And that's a lovely big chub, that is.
He's very fine. He's very fine too. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, look at him, he's lovely.
Yeah, pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, catching it. Yeah, because I got a pound.
And unfortunately, the boats died off at this point. And that was pretty much the end of that line, because the colour dropped out. It got very clear over there. And if there was any fish there, they just hadn't got any confidence to take the bait. So, although I did try a few things on that line, I had started by just loose feeding casters. I eventually tried cupping in some chopped worm over there with a bit of caster, tried maggots over the top of it, tried worm, again casters, and I've only had one more bite over there, and that was a little perch on a piece of worm. Not exactly what I was after. So it was back to the track to try and catch some more fish there. And although I never had many bites down the track after that, I did have one lovely big fish there. This one tried his best to go up the far bank. Double six elastic was doing its job. And it's a nice perch of around £2. Cracking fish. Look at that beauty. Stunning.
But I'll just put the sound on, will I? I'm doing a lot of smiling on the, I'll be doing a lot of smiling on the video. It'll be so good, like.
And every time a boat came over, I went back over to that far bank to try and catch me another chub, hoping that that bit of colour off a boat would entice a fish to have a go. To no avail though, it never happened again. At the end of the match I was ruining myself really, because okay, I lost a chub, I've lost 2 chub, but after I lost that first one I should have geared up. So I should have at least one more fish in the net, one more chub in the net. But we live and learn. So one last look down the track before we finish. See if I can catch me another big perch. But that 2 pounder turned out to be the last fish of the day. So when Motty turned up with the scales, he'd already weighed in stock cables in. And the lad that was on there had weighed 24 pounding. I knew I hadn't got anywhere near that. So I knew the zone was won there. Apparently, speaking to him after the match, the lull in boat traffic after 2.5 hours helped his peg. He caught nothing while the boats were on, but then, or very little while the boats were on. But as the boat settled down, his peg got really good. He caught loads of bream and skimmers and that. Whereas my peg was totally the opposite. The more boats there was, the better that 16 metre line was, that 15 metre line was. So I had to weigh my fish in two ways. I got one chub in my net there, and then everything else in the basket there. So my 2 weighs combined together went 16,415, which was £8 short of what that lad on the cables had weighed. I wouldn't have done that. Even if I'd have got those 2 chub out, I wouldn't have weighed that. So the miracle never happened. Still a cracking day's fishing though. Lovely net of fish. And it ended up with that lad winning the match with £24, and then I ended up second in the match. So at least I had a decent payday. Just a pity I couldn't have got the zone win to qualify for the final. See them pair having a selfie. Now this chub is the one I had on the riot gear, which is the final big fish I hooked over there all day. A cracking chub, and he weighed £3, 15 ounce and 15 grams. Motty being tight wouldn't give me the £4 for him. But a cracking fish nonetheless. So if you've enjoyed watching that, give it a thumbs up. Look at that cracking fish. £3, 15, 15 he weighed. So if you enjoyed watching that, give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more like this, please subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.